Well, hello everyone, this is Scott, your Hoosier Marshal, here from Northeast Indiana for another video. Today, Northeast Indiana weather sucks once again. It's raining, been raining all day. I was hoping that I could come home and mow my yard and spend a little time working outside, but that's not going to happen. So I decided to make this video from my indoor studio today, so no pipe smoking at the moment. As soon as I'm done and get this edited and posted, I will go out in the barn and enjoy a bowl. Today I thought I would talk about something where we're all about team freedom and legal things and showing our weapons. So today I thought I would talk a little bit about, is your home your castle? Is your home a place where you should be free from intrusion, free from someone committing a crime against you, someone trying to harm you? Is your home a safe place? Is your home your castle? Well, depending on where you live, it may or may not be. See, we have a thing in this country called the castle doctrine, where a man's home is supposed to be his castle. He's supposed to be free from intrusion, to live his life without fear of things like that. And castle doctrine allows you, if someone enters your home and is threatening you, harming you, you have a right to defend your castle because that's your safe place. It should be your safe place. Some states are not a castle doctrine state. I can't speak for where you live. I'm not your attorney. I'm not here to give legal advice. Research things for your own and make sure you know that you're in the right if you ever need to protect your castle. So I took the time to print off this definition. A castle doctrine, also known as a castle law or a self-defense of habitation law, is a legal doctrine that designates a person's abode, meaning your home, or any legally occupied space, for an example, an automobile or a home, as a place in which that person has protections and immunities, permitting one, in certain circumstances, to use force, up to and including deadly force, to defend oneself against an intruder, free from legal persecution for the consequence of the force used. The term is most commonly used in the United States, though many other countries invoke comparable principles of their laws. I can tell you, I know for a fact that Indiana is a castle doctrine state. We don't have a right to retreat. Obviously, if you can just get the hell out of the situation and avoid something bad coming down, use your brain and do that. But you have a right to stand your ground and defend yourself. So, depending on the location, a person may have a duty to retreat to avoid violence if one can reasonably do so. Castle doctrines lessen the duty of retreat when an individual is assaulted within one's own home. Deadly force may either be justified, the burdens of production and for proof, for charges, impediment, or an affirmative defense against criminal homicide, applicable in cases when the actor reasonably fears imminent peril of death or serious bodily harm to him or herself or another. The castle doctrine is not a defined law that can be invoked, but a set of principles which may be incorporated in some form in many jurisdictions. Castle doctrines may not provide civil immunity, such as from wrongful death suits, which have a much lower burden of proof. Justifiable homicide in self-defense, which happens to occur inside one's home, is distinct as a matter of law from castle doctrine, because the mere occurrence of trespassing and occasionally a subjective requirement of fear is sufficient to invoke the castle doctrine, under which the burden of proofs of fact is much less challenging than that of justifying homicide in self-defense. However, the existence in a legal code of such a provision of justifiable homicide in self-defense pertaining to one's domicile does not imply the creation of a castle doctrine protecting the estate and exonerating any duty to retreat. The use of this legal principle in the United States has been controversial in relation to a number of cases in which it has been invoked. The castle doctrine is strengthened when there's no legal duty to retreat. However, even states that have enacted castle doctrine legislations may place more restrictions on what constitutes lawful conduct or reasonable actions, thereby offering weaker protections. But remember that if you're in a state with a strong castle doctrine presumption, even one that's supported with stand your ground laws, the castle doctrine only provides a presumption. A presumption can be rebutted by a prosecutor and stripped from you. Is the castle doctrine absolute? Just because you use force or deadly force in your castle, it doesn't mean you will be automatically found justified by a jury. If your state doesn't provide a legal presumption, you'll likely still have to prove that you acted reasonably. If your state does give you a presumption of reasonableness, this presumption can be overcome by a prosecutor beyond a reasonable doubt. For example, if the person who unlawfully and forcefully entered your dwelling is a uniformed Girl Scout with an arm full of cookies, you're likely to be found guilty at trial, even with your castle doctrine presumption. Castle doctrine protection, especially when bolstered by stand your ground laws, are a wonderful relief to the law-abiding gun owner. To make sure you're complying with your state's version of the castle doctrine or stand your ground, check your state's law. I know what my state's law is. I don't live in your state. I don't work in your state. I'm not a law enforcement officer in your state. I am in Indiana, and Indiana is a strong castle doctrine state and a strong stand your ground state. You just have to be smart about it. You like the example, if a little Girl Scout breaks in your house and you shoot and kill her, your castle doctrine defense isn't going to mean anything. Now, if some methed out crackhead kicks in your front door and runs in with a knife and attacks you, castle doctrine kicks in and it's in full force. Common sense, people. I do not know other countries even. I've heard some of you speaking of the fact that if you tried to defend yourself even in your own home, you sort of become a criminal yourself. You're the one put on trial, which is ridiculous, but I don't control the laws in your country or even if you live in another state and what they are. I just wanted to make this video to talk about it, get you thinking, know what is legal where you are and what's not legal. If someone broke into my house and came charging at me, I'm going to exercise my right of the castle doctrine. That simple. I am always prepared. You should be too, in some form or another, to protect yourself, protect your family. A lot of these things, at least in the state of Indiana, they're in defense of yourself or others. You are allowed to use force, including up to and including deadly force, when justified, to protect another person. It's not just you looking out for yourself, it's you looking out for yourself, your family, and other people. You just have to understand what's right and what's wrong in it, and make sure you're doing the right thing. So, the castle doctrine extend to your car? In Indiana, yes, it does. I'm going to play a short little clip that I pulled here and let you watch it. I think it's two attorneys talking about this. Your car is your mobile castle. It's your mobile abode. It's your safe place. People aren't allowed to rip your door open and rob you. People are not allowed to rip your door open and try to carjack you or attack you. It's your mobile castle. Be prepared to protect yourself in your mobile castle, just like your true castle. What happens to you afterwards? That depends on where you live, the prosecutor in the county where you are. Are they a Soros-funded prosecuting attorney? And they hate guns and they're going to try to screw you over? I don't know. Here, the prosecutors are very good. They understand the law. They live their lives just the way we do. They want to protect their self. They want to protect their castle. And if you followed everything right, nothing will happen to you. It's reasonableness, objective reasonableness. What would any normal, reasonable person do if they were in that situation? There's many established case laws about this. I mean, it goes along with police officers performing their duties and the actions they take, because things are always rapidly evolving, and an officer is judged by objective reasonableness. Police officers are no different than anyone else. If I'm out on the street and I'm dealing with a situation and someone come charging at me with a knife and I pull out my handgun and I shoot them, when the prosecutor looks at it, he's going to say, what would an objectively reasonable person do if someone was charging at them with a knife? What that would be? You got a gun, take action. That is the objective, reasonable thing to do. I've talked in other videos, the example of a knife. Don't think you can turn and run from someone charging at you with a knife, because it's not going to happen unless you have one hell of a head start on them. And you better make sure you're in better physical shape than they are, because they'll track you down. A gun, a police officer responds to a domestic, walks in the home, and the guy is there and pulls out a gun, points it at him. What would any objectively reasonable person do in that situation, whether you were a police officer or not? If you walk in that situation, someone draws down on you and you're armed, what's an objectively reasonable person going to do? That's how these things are judged. So always keep that in mind. It's about common sense. It's about using your head. And no one wants to be in these situations. No one wants to be put in a situation where you may have to protect your castle. You may have to shoot and kill somebody. I don't ever want to be in that situation. When I go to work every day, I understand what I may walk into at any minute. I don't ever want to have to be in that situation where I have to take someone's life. I have to shoot someone, seriously injure them. I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want to hurt anybody. But if I walk into a situation, doesn't even have to be a gun or a knife, I walk into a situation and someone just starts attacking me, what's any objectively reasonable person going to do? They're going to fight back. So, now you fight back and you win the fight, you have to stop. So does a police officer. Once we win the fight and the person is in handcuffs, we're done. It's over. You check on the person, make sure they're okay, they don't need any medical help. Make sure you're okay, you don't need any medical help. It's the same for you in your home or in your car, in your castle. If you get in that situation and you have to fight the fight, I hope you win. But once you win, it's over, you stop. You don't continue to beat someone until you seriously maim or kill them. because that's not what an objectively reasonable person would do. Just keep that in mind. That's how you are judged. So I'll go ahead and play this clip for you now.
Has now progressed from the point where they are outside your vehicle, they're yelling at it, they're yelling at you. Now, if they actually begin to make contact with the vehicle, that changes things a bit, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, certainly. I mean, I think for those states, particularly that have strong castle doctrine laws, where that forceful and unlawful entry, or whatever exact legal terminology your state puts on it, when someone is trying to enter if it's your castle, you have really strong defensive rights to respond with force. I mean, potentially even deadly force if necessary. There are states that give you a presumption of reasonableness, which is great, because once someone tries to get into that castle, the jury's going to be instructed to presume you reasonable. Mm-hmm. Now, bear in mind, you may live in a state that either does not have a castle doctrine presumption or doesn't apply it to the vehicle. But even if you don't, it's still, it changes the reasonableness balance in my mind between someone just standing outside your car and someone doing something, whether it's, actually really aggressively trying to get in, like let's say by breaking a window or even pulling at your door handle. I think it changes that reasonable person response.
Certainly, and I have experience with an incident that sort of kind of textbook plays out this way, where two individuals, it wasn't technically a road rage, but one individual was in a car, one individual was on the sidewalk. They got into an argument because they were neighbors. So they got into an argument with each other, and they were, talking very aggressively, throwing out threats and insults and comments and everything else. And then the bright line, whenever the bright line was crossed, the individual who was outside the car, actually the window was down, of course, because they were talking, reached through the open window and grabbed the other guy by his shirt collar. And at that point, the other guy then brought his firearm out of the center console. The guy immediately backed up and said, "Oh, you effed up. You effed up. I'm going to call the cops." Well, the cops did respond. Fortunately, the cops knew the law. The guy reemphasized the actual physical act that motivated him to show the gun, which was the guy actually forcefully and unlawfully entering his car with his arm to grab him by the collar. And the police immediately agreed that there was no crime, that the guy, completely obviously acted in self-defense once the guy who had reached the gun. Now, obviously, if the guy had not reached through the car, if they were just still sitting there arguing, and then he decided to show the gun, totally different story.
All right, folks, I just wanted to give you some food for thought, I'm not your lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just telling you what established case law is out there and what the castle doctrine is. I think we all understand what stand your ground law is, or a right to retreat. To me, right to retreat is just stupid. Everyone has a right to defend themselves and others, and the states should never enact a law to take that ability away from you, but that seems to be more and more prevalent. So if you have a right to retreat state, you're running. If you have a stand your ground state, fight the fight. Appreciate each and every one of you. This is Scott, your Hoosier Marshal from Northeast Indiana, saying make sure you always take the time to tell those you love what they mean to you, because you never know when it just might be too late.